From brokenness to the king's table. The story of Mephibosheth. Have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever felt like life has passed you by, like everyone else is moving forward, but you're stuck with pain, disappointment, or wounds that never seem to heal? Maybe you've carried labels you never asked for. Maybe you felt defined by your mistakes, your past, or your limitations. Or maybe you've been overlooked, rejected, or abandoned by people who should have loved you. If you've ever felt that way, the story of Mephibosheth is for you, because his life is a picture of every broken, forgotten, and hurting person, and it shows us that God as grace has a way of finding us in the lowest places. The fall into brokenness. Mephibosheth was born into royalty. He was the grandson of King Saul, the son of Jonathan, David's beloved friend. As a little boy, he probably ran through the palace halls, laughing, carefree, surrounded by privilege and protection. But one day, everything changed. News came that his father and grandfather were dead in battle. The kingdom was in chaos. His nurse grabbed him to flee, but in her haste she stumbled. The boy fell, and his tiny legs were shattered. At just 5 years old, his future was stolen. The child of promise became a child of pain. The boy who once played in the palace now lived with a permanent limp, unable to walk. And from then on, Mephibosheth's name was associated not with royalty, but with brokenness. Can you imagine what that must have felt like? To go from being known as a prince, to being hidden away as a cripple, to feel the weight of loss, disability, and shame all at once? Maybe you don't have physical scars like Mephibosheth, but you know the sting of brokenness. Maybe it's the rejection of a friend. Maybe it's the abandonment of a parent. Maybe it's a diagnosis, a disability, a failure, or a heartbreak that makes you feel like life has pushed you into the shadows. Mephibosheth understood that pain. Living in Lo-debar, years passed. Mephibosheth grew up far from Jerusalem, in a barren place called Lo-debar. The name itself means no pasture, no hope, no future. He was royalty by birth, but lived in obscurity. He was an heir to the throne, but he felt like a burden. He was alive, but in many ways he was just surviving. Lo-debar is more than a place. It's a picture of the human heart when life has crushed us. It's that place of emptiness where dreams feel dead. That place of loneliness where you think no one sees you. That place where your past mistakes or present struggles tell you, this is it. This is who you'll always be. But Mephibosheth's story wasn't over, and neither is yours. The king remembers. Far away in the palace of Jerusalem, King David sat on the throne, and one day he remembered his covenant with Jonathan, his dearest friend. He asked, "Is there anyone left from Saul's house to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Think about that. Years had passed. Saul was gone. Jonathan was gone. Most kings would have forgotten old promises, or worse, killed off the family of the previous dynasty to protect their throne. But David's heart was different. He wanted to honor his friend. He wanted to show kindness, not judgment, not revenge. Word came back. There is one. Jonathan's son. But he is crippled in both feet. David didn't hesitate. He said, "Bring him to me." And just like that, Mephibosheth's ordinary day in Lo-debar turned into the day his life changed forever. From fear to favor. Can you imagine the fear Mephibosheth must have felt when the king's men arrived? For his entire life, he probably believed that if David ever found him, he would be killed. After all, kings didn't usually welcome crippled descendants of their rivals. But there he was summoned to the palace, crippled, ashamed, forgotten, dragged from the shadows into the presence of the king. When Mephibosheth stood before David, he fell on his face in fear. He called himself a dead dog. That's how worthless he felt. But David looked at him with compassion and said, "Do not be afraid. I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. You will always eat at my table. In a single moment, everything changed. The forgotten was remembered. The crippled was carried. The outcast was welcomed. The hopeless was restored. The king's table, from that day forward, Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, eating at the king's table like one of David's own sons. Picture that table for a moment. Princes, warriors, leaders. And at the end, a man who could not walk. His legs may have been crippled, but when he sat at the king's table, his brokenness was covered. He was no longer the boy from Lo-debar. He was a son at the table of the king. And that, my friend, is grace. Our story, too, Mephibosheth's story, is not just history. It's our story, too. Because the truth is we are all broken in some way. We all live in our own Lo-debar sometimes. Maybe it's depression. Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's a hidden sin, a scar, a struggle, or a secret pain no one else sees. We all know what it's like to feel unworthy, to feel left out, to feel forgotten. But just like David remembered Jonathan's son, God remembers you. Through Jesus, the son of David, the king says to you, "Do not be afraid. I will show you kindness. You will always eat at my table." At the king's table, your disability doesn't disqualify you. Your past doesn't define you. Your pain doesn't determine your worth. Grace covers it all. And God's love lifts you from Lo-debar into his presence. Encouragement for the heartbroken, disabled, and forgotten. So if you are disabled, know this. Your value is not measured by your abilities, but by the love of your King. You may feel limited, but in God's eyes, you are limitless in worth. If you are forgotten, remember Mephibosheth. God's grace has not forgotten your name. Even in the barren places, the King knows where you are. If you are heartbroken, know that God is close to the brokenhearted. Just as David lifted Mephibosheth, God will lift you. And if you feel hopeless, remember that Lo-debar was not the end of Mephibosheth's story, and it's not the end of yours. The King has already prepared a seat for you. The story of Mephibosheth reminds us, no matter how broken we are, no matter how far we've fallen, no matter how long we've been in Lo-debar, grace will find us. The King of Kings invites us to his table. He doesn't just restore what was lost. He gives us a new identity, not as outcasts, not as forgotten, but as sons and daughters of the King. So lift your head. You are not a dead dog. You are not worthless. You are not forgotten. You are chosen. You are loved. And you have a seat at the King's table forever. Thank you for joining us for this story. This is SteadFast, where real stories of faith bring hope to your life. Stay tuned for more encouragement, because your story is not over yet.